You do not, when you are invited to join somebody on stage, prepare a lie, right? Present them with a lie and try to peer pressure them in front of their own fans, because it's becoming very clear to me that Charlie was a product to everybody else. He was not a human being. He was a product that they felt that they had manufactured. That is my honest opinion, and I am entitled to that opinion. You guys are losing. I want you to know that, because the market, turns out the market is smarter than you are.
Candace Owens just praised Megyn Kelly for telling the truth about the Zionist smear campaign against her, and in particular, Ben Shapiro's underhanded attempt to try to manipulate Megyn Kelly at her own event with lies about Candace, and this enrages the Israel First crowd that Megyn Kelly at least had the guts to stand up and say, yeah, no, that was false, Ben was wrong. Let's see what Candace has to say about this. If you know Candace, you know she has receipts. Just call her Candace Receipts Owens at this point. Let's get right into it. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
Can we all agree? Zionists are not acting right. They are panicking so much that they randomly sent Ben Shapiro out into the daylight. And that, my friends, like I said, is a move, okay? Cersei would never send Joffrey Lannister into battle, right? And they just went ahead and did that. And he lied to Megyn Kelly's face. It is never a good idea to lie, full stop. Definitely not a good idea to lie to a woman's face. And definitely not a good idea to lie to her face and try to humiliate her on her own tour. I personally would have strongly advised against it, okay? If somebody said, is this a good idea? I would have said, yeah, you know what? Let's maybe not do that. But it happened. And it's important to stress here that this was not just a simple mistake that Ben made, right? That's always a possibility, that Ben really thought maybe he's backstage and sees something on Twitter and somebody said, Candace just said that Erica Kirk murdered Charlie, and then he gets on stage and he repeats it. Maybe it's just an accident. Highly unlikely, but of course you have to run that plausibility. But we can now confirm that that certainly was not the case. This was not a simple mistake, because in the days following it, he didn't recant. He did not modify. He did not correct. He has a platform. He could have just come out and said, oh, you know, I got the details wrong. Nope. This was a premeditated and a post-meditated lie.
Of course, and the Zionists never recant. They always rely on the stupid old anti-Semitism and blood libel and making up lies to smear critics of Israel rather than actually taking on those topics, and in particular, Candace Owens. Yeah, this was an underhanded tactic by Ben to try to manipulate a fence sitter on this, Megyn Kelly, on her own show. And what's so ridiculous about this is Ben Shapiro is, he shouldn't be this stupid to say something so easily falsifiable. It just really shows the desperation of the Israel First crowd, and Ben Shapiro being something of a stalwart within that crowd.
Okay. Intended to morally blackmail Megyn into a position to decide right now on the spot whether you are going to stand with evil Candace, who is accusing Erica Kirk of murdering her own husband. And that lie backfired gloriously. By the way, I think if it had been any other person, like if it was not Megyn Kelly who was sitting across from Ben, his strategy would have worked. That was high pressure, peer pressure. She happens to be extraordinarily media trained, and she didn't buck, okay? She looked uncomfortable, but she did not bend to his will. She kind of just moved along and said some stuff about Tucker, asked again, like, are you sure she said that? And he said, yes, she said that.
Credit to Megyn Kelly, she actually did follow it up with plausible reasons why that would sound preposterous. I'm not a fan of Megyn Kelly and where she stands on the Israel question, of course, but she at least pushed back a little, like, hey, wouldn't have this been a bigger story if that was actually true? And, talking to Ben Shapiro about how Tucker Carlson is such an anti-Semite because he doesn't think Zohran Mamdani is an anti-Semite. Stupidest thing in the world. But there were so many different tactics of manipulation used against Megyn Kelly by Ben Shapiro, both in direction toward getting Megyn to side with him over Candace Owens and to side with him over Tucker Carlson. But Americans aren't buying it. How could we buy it at this point? No one is.
And then she found out, obviously, that I did not say that. And the following night of her tour, during a Q&A section, somebody named Josh stepped up and asked her about that moment. And here is what Megyn Kelly said.
Hi, Megyn.
Hi.
My name is Joshua. My question is, during a recent stop, you had Ben Shapiro as a guest, and he had made some claims about Candace, saying that she had said certain things online, and when he made those claims, you looked visibly uncomfortable because, you know, you hadn't heard that and couldn't
Correct.
verify that. So my question is, why did you look so uncomfortable in that moment, and have you researched the claims that he made since?
Thank you for that. Yeah, no, he said that Candace has been claiming Erica Kirk was behind the murder of Charlie, which I had not heard, and I was taken aback because that seems like something I would have heard. It's so crazy. And I have since learned it is not true. Candace has not made that claim. And in fact, I've now seen several clips of Candace specifically defending Erica Kirk and saying she would never make a claim like that about Erica, and that she, you know, she is open-minded to other people at Turning Point. That's obvious. She's been making that point. I had heard that point. But she's specifically been defending Erica Kirk, and she's been saying she does not think that of Erica. And in fact, if you read her comments, she's under pressure to make comments about Erica. And so far, what I've seen, she hasn't. So thank you for that question.
I also noticed the funniest thing about that line of questioning by this Josh guy that asked the question to Megyn is he said, "You recently talked to Ben Shapiro," and there was one guy in the audience that you could audibly hear go, "Woo!" I just, suspect that guy was standing by himself or something going, "Woo!" And then everyone looked at him and he's like, wasn't me. And then when she said no, essentially that was a lie. She said that nicely. That wasn't true is the way she put it. That Candace didn't lie. You got a lot more applause. It's just really showing where Americans are on this thing, is that lies just aren't going over the way that they did under the legacy of media. We're not going to deal with that anymore.
And I'll tell you right now, Megyn was not done. And I will say this, even if I remove myself from a situation, it is actually the most disrespectful thing that you can do to someone that you purport to be friends with or friendly with. I can't even imagine that. Like, hey, will you join me on stage? I really like you and I'm on tour and I'd love to have you on stage for a discussion. And then this person starts coming after me and questioning my moral compass. Really process that. That's just not cool beyond anything else. So I was pretty dumbfounded when Dave Rubin weighed in on the matter and
great.
he called what Ben did, effectively trying to humiliate Megyn on her own stage. He referred to it as almost an act of bravery. Take a listen to what Dave Rubin says.
All right. First off, again, like I know I guess I'm glazing Ben right now, but he deserves it. It is not easy to go onto someone else's show in general when it's not a live audience and criticize them. But it's really not easy to do it when you're in front of thousands of people. I don't know how many people are at those shows, but it's certainly thousands. You can add it to me. When thousands of people are there to watch Megyn, and then you have to criticize her a little bit, and he did it absolutely respectfully, and I think he did it properly.
No, Dave, it's wrong. It's wrong what he did. It would take courage to stand in front of someone and try to manipulate him based on lies in their direction, or in this case, manipulate her in his direction on the basis of lies. That would be tough to do because we're not lying imbeciles that are acting on behalf of a foreign regime as essentially a foreign agent. We're regular people that want the truth and want to retain our sovereignty in America when our political class is captured by people you love that are prioritizing this foreign regime over us. So yeah, that would be hard to do, but it's because it would be duplicitous to do. And most people aren't willing to do that like Ben Shapiro was.
Listen, I don't care. Look, you can tell, I don't really want to talk about Tucker. I certainly don't want to talk about this Nick guy, but sometimes these things just hit you in the desk, and I agree with Ben. Like, I have a job to do, and if I don't address the things sometimes that I don't want to, then I'm probably not very good at my job, and you should watch another show. I don't really...
You should watch another show regardless. I'll just come out and say it. You should watch another show regardless if you're still on the Rubin show at this point.
really want to talk about Candace. We were great friends for a long time. She has been to this house for dinner. She loves chicken parm.
Well, I can fact check true. I have been to his house for dinner, and I do really love chicken parm, and I had a good one at his house. I will say that. I'm not going to front. But the other part that he is saying here, I don't know what happens when you're a Zionist where you just, on this one topic, and this was what it was with Dave Rubin and why I had to stop being friends with him or friendly with him, is like they just don't know what it actually means to be a good friend. You do not, when you are invited to join somebody on stage, prepare a lie right? Present them with a lie and try to peer pressure them in front of their own fans. That's like, there are a million things that could happen before that ever comes to it. She did not invite him to have a debate. She invited him to come on her tour and to introduce, to have him in front of her audience and to have a conversation about their values. It's just not the right place, not the right time.
It sure seems manipulative regardless. And that would be true about any subject. It would be manipulative if they were talking about the economy and he was trying to pull her to his side in front of a live audience that is her audience. It just seems absurd. It just seems insane. Israel is their golden calf. They'll do anything to preserve that golden calf, even if it means, sacrificing their own communities. They could watch their communities burn to the ground if for only to preserve this foreign regime and whatever it wants from our political class. Wars, bankrolling a genocide, military strikes, regime change operations, anything they want. They prioritize that over every other issue. They allow that to come between friendships because that's a higher priority to them than their friendships. We need to manipulate this person to the side of Israel. And if there's critics of Israel, you need to denounce that person. Denounce Candace Owens right now. This was Ben trying to lead a struggle session. It just was. It was wokeness. Ben Shapiro is woke. It's the same propensity the liberal establishment had against conservatives if you said men couldn't get pregnant. They would yell, sexist, racist, homophobe. And they would be called rightly, I think, in that case, snowflakes by the right. Well, now Ben's doing that same thing.
And it really just shows that you're not a good person because she probably went backstage, okay, and said hello to him, was all friendly. If you want to take her to the side and said, hey, I wanted to have a face-to-face conversation with you, that's how like regular people would handle something like that. Not try to humiliate you on your own stage. That's just going to make Megyn upset. And Megyn does eventually do what I do when I get mad. I double down on the truth, right? That is what I sentence people to, more truth. And it's fantastic to just be able to share more truth. And you don't have to be vengeful. You can just share more truth, and it's deeply upsetting to them. And that's what she does. She was literally trending all weekend. This video that she shared was incredibly interesting because you will recall that after Charlie died, there was basically just me, Tucker, and Megyn that were trying to say, hey, something like was going on, and he was feeling a lot of peer pressure in the weeks leading up to his death. And
yeah, credit to all three of them for doing it. Megyn less so, but Tucker and Candace certainly did that. And credit to Megyn Kelly, by the way. I don't agree with her on the Israel issue. She still professes to be a Zionist, by the way. But at least she's maintained her friendships with critics of Israel like Tucker. She'll stand up and defend Tucker and say, hey, you're not painting him in the proper light. Sitting across from Ben Shapiro on that and telling the truth about this. Standing in front of her crowd and essentially saying nicely, Ben Shapiro's a liar. He was a liar because he lied to you about what Candace Owens has really claimed. And here's why. And she was right. So credit where it's due.
Zionists were claiming that's all a lie. And Tucker was like, no. Charlie asked me explicitly in July to go on stage and to go after Israel, trying to drag us into the Iran war. And I was talking to him about Jeffrey Epstein. And I was saying to Charlie, I won't do it. And Charlie wanted me to do it, right? And the Zionist said that he was lying. I'm going to refresh your memory here and let you listen to what Tucker claimed that they then said was a lie.
Before that speech that I gave in July, we had a conversation about this backstage right before I went on. And I was fulminating and getting all red in the face like I often do to my shame. And I was mad thinking about this and thinking about the effort by the neocons in the United States to draw us in to another forever war with Iran. It's not a defense of Iran, of course. It's merely an acknowledgement that we've done this before. This happened in Iraq, which we entered into at the behest of those same foreign policy strategists, and it didn't work. And so I was going on at some length backstage with Charlie, and I said, probably not going to talk about that. I'm not going to torture you. I know your donors hate this when I say that. And also Epstein was in the news, and it was clear to me that, Epstein's probably not like a Mossad agent or something, but Epstein clearly had contact with Israeli intelligence and American intelligence and French intelligence, but the only one you're not allowed to talk about is Israeli intelligence. But it seemed true to me, and I had done some work on that. I knew a bunch of people pretty close to that story. So So I thought that. And I said that to Charlie. And I said, but I'm not going to say that because I don't want to make your donors mad. I know it's just going to be like an endless flurry of text telling you to stop or you're going to lose a bunch of funding. And he looked at me, I'll never forget it, and said, go all the way. Do it. Go all the way. I said, man, a lot of things I can talk about. I don't need to talk about that. And he said, do it.
Yeah.
And by the way, a lot of people called him a conspiracy theorist for this, Tucker, for saying this. He can't corroborate it. There's no evidence to suggest it. He's just this Looney Tune hell-bent on destroying Israel, being an anti-Semite, according to Randy Fine, the most dangerous anti-Semite in America. Well, if I know Candace, she's going to show Megyn Kelly's response to that, because it turns out Megyn Kelly found film corroborating exactly what Tucker Carlson said about this and this conversation.
I said they tried to bury Charlie in a yarmulke, and we were telling you, no, he had a change of heart towards the end. And I was telling you that Turning Point had captured that. They were all mic'd, okay? So Turning Point captured that, and they could have easily released it to give me a little bit of backup, but of course that wasn't going to come from them. Well, just my luck and Tucker's luck that Megyn Kelly actually caught very quickly. Maybe it looks like maybe her assistant's backstage. I don't know the backstory here, but she was in that discussion, which I had not heard before, and she reveals very quickly. You were going to hear Charlie say that Tucker should go for it. So this is what Megyn Kelly released on her show yesterday, and you should go watch the full episode. Take a listen.
I found a video of me, Tucker, and Charlie speaking backstage right before Tucker went out. Tucker and I were talking. Charlie came over and interrupted for just a second, and you can hear him on this tape, which I've listened to many times. It's very clear on my phone, less clear here probably as we play it, but he says to Tucker, go Max. He interrupts the conversation because he has to say to Tucker something. And what was so important to him to tell Tucker was, go Max. Here it is.
Okay, go Max. Go on.
It's quick. It just happens to be on tape. And it backs up what Tucker said.
Absolutely, and I can just anticipate the Zionist response to this. Oh, go Max? Yeah, he said go Max, go Zionist Max. That's what he was telling Tucker Carlson, because he was still a devout Zionist, the most rigid one in the world. He'd never want to talk about Epstein being potential Mossad asset, even though he, in fact, raised that possibility on his show and with Megyn Kelly, I believe, too. But they're going to say, oh, he means just go Max Zionism, like Tucker was ever going to do that. You can just anticipate their next move. It's always a lie. It's always manipulative. And it's always designed to just kind of make every criticism of Israel negated by lies. That's all they have now. That's their repertoire.
Well, Charlie, we're going Max now, okay? Because Tucker told the truth. He had a conversation with Charlie about everything, and Charlie wanted him to go hard. Now Megyn's adding to it. He even interrupted right before he hit the stage and said, go Max, because Charlie was done with these donors. He was done with them. He really was. And I can tell you another story about which donor was waiting for him once Tucker got off stage and yelled at Charlie. That was a female Jewish donor. And I will be outing her later because I don't care about anything right now. Anyways, point being is we were telling the truth. And we have been facing so much peer pressure, so much nastiness for just trying to get out the true narrative about where Charlie's headspace was at before he died.
That's true. They were telling the truth, and they got a lot of people trapped by lionizing him as a rigid Zionist until the end. Josh Hammer, people like that on the record saying that when she divulged that he said in verbatim text in that group chat 48 hours before his death, I have no choice but to leave the pro-Israel cause. That's what Charlie Kirk said at the end. Josh Hammer was privy to that. Rob McCoy was privy to that in that text group. But they still went forward with lies to try to use and exploit their friend's death so that they could preserve this attachment to Israel, this sacramental attachment that Zionists have, that they prioritize that above their own country, above their own country's well-being. Just think of that. What would it take to get into that level of immorality, to let these stories fly, let these people just lie endlessly about Charlie Kirk and where he was at, knowing that that's not true and not saying a thing about it to counter it? Absurd.
And my favorite part of all of this now is watching them lose. The people who tried with all of the money in the world to artificially direct the markets toward them after Charlie died are losing, okay? The people who sold t-shirts, who got on stage and said they were Charlie's favorite pastor, America's pastor, I'm going to take over for Charlie. The people who use their connections, their wealth to get themselves almost invited to be a part of Charlie Kirk's legacy. People that didn't even support Charlie Kirk while he was alive. The people who rushed to lie about me and Charlie's relationship, as close as we were. You guys are losing. I want you to know that, because the market, turns out the market is smarter than you are.
That is right. Every word of it's right. She's correct about that. And that's where we're at right now. We're at the point where Americans just won't be able to, not see through these Zionist lies and all the drama that swirls around it from the Israel First crowd trying to undermine the truth tellers about this story, and not only the Charlie Kirk story, about Israel in general, because that draws the most ire and indignation and vengeance from these rigid Zionists like Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin and Dave Rubin. Just hilarious watching Rubin say, yeah, it takes courage to do what Ben does. Yeah, it does take courage to lie and try to manipulate your friend in front of her audience. It does take that, Dave. But that's where we're at. So Candace, proven right once again, bringing the receipts as she always does. Megyn Kelly, thankfully taking a stand on this issue. Doesn't mean she's going to, depart from the pro-Israel cause like Charlie Kirk clearly did in his last hours on Earth. But it does mean she's at least more honest than Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin and Randy Fine and Lindsey Graham and all these blowhards, hell-bent on preserving the Israel First doctrine in every regard in our politics and political system. That's what that means. She's at least more honest than them. So I commend her for that. Thanks for standing in front of your crowd and telling the truth about this. Because it's not going to be popular to a lot of Megyn's fans that are Zionists, that are rigid adherents to the Israel First mantra that Ben Shapiro represents, that Ben Shapiro epitomizes. So that's where we're left with. It's no doubt the Zionists rely on lies. Americans see through it more and more. Hasn't changed our political class and their orientation toward this cruel genocidal regime yet, but Americans know the truth, more and more so. Every poll's reflecting that. Sympathy toward the Palestinians gained 50 points since October 7th. It's just undeniable. That's such a sweeping change that it's even hard to articulate how big of a change that is. Candace is part of it. Tucker's at the forefront of that too. So is Nick Fuentes. So is Dave Smith. They're doing the Lord's work, telling the truth about this connection and how it robs Americans of our sovereignty and how it's duplicitous for AIPAC to be able to get away with this. With dual citizenship in Congress, they get away with everything. Hopefully not for much longer, but we'll have to see about that. But let me know, do you think Candace Owens is right about this? Was this particularly manipulative? Is Ben Shapiro going to lose a lot of credibility over this? Seems like he's lost a lot of YouTube subscribers so far, over 20K in one day from what I saw. Maybe it's more now. I don't know. I haven't really been following that. But let me know down below your thoughts on this. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to Candace Owens. She's awesome and heroic. Really appreciate her. If you like this video, please click the join button down below if you want to support the channel. And if you do that, I'll give you access to all of my videos before they go live to the general public. Those are the members only videos. You'll be able to watch those right away if you join as a member. And also, if you want a free copy of my first book, Compact of the Republic, click the link for that in the description below. It'll shoot you off to a site. Plug in your email. I'll send that right to you via email. No cost, no obligation. Just my gift to you for being a humble viewer. Thank you. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.